Okay, let's talk about one of the most incredible, almost unbelievable stories from the entire American Civil War. Seriously, it's a tale of incredible daring, deep cover secrets, and one man who literally changed the course of his life and history with a single audacious act. So picture this. It's a sticky, humid May morning in Charleston, South Carolina. The air is just thick with the tension of war. You gotta remember, this city is a fortress, a bastion of Confederate power. But in the quiet pre-dawn gloom, something absolutely unthinkable has happened. A Confederate warship, the CSS Planter, has just vanished. Poof, gone. The news hits the city like a thunderclap, and the Confederate command is furious. I mean, how could this possibly happen? This wasn't a Union raid. No, this was an inside job. And the person responsible? A man they legally considered their property. This wasn't just a military failure. It was an act that spat in the face of their entire worldview. Yeah, panic starts to grip the city. The regional commander, Major John C. Pemberton, is reportedly livid. And you can understand why. This wasn't just about losing a ship. It was a massive blow to Confederate pride. It was a crack in the very foundation of their whole system. And we're not talking about some little rowboat here. The Planter was a serious piece of military hardware. It was fast, it was armed to the teeth, and it was absolutely essential for defending Charleston Harbor. It moved troops, it moved supplies, it moved vital information. Losing it was a tactical disaster, but the way they lost it, well, that was an ideological nightmare. So to figure out how this happened, you have to understand the man who pulled it off, Robert Smalls. Now, to the Confederate officers, he was just there, part of the crew, part of the ship's machinery, an enslaved wheelman. But because they never truly saw him, he saw everything. He was the invisible man at the center of it all, listening, watching, and remembering. Small's education didn't happen in a schoolhouse. His university was the Charleston Docks. He was sent there when he was just 12 years old, and that chaotic, bustling harbor taught him everything. He learned the tides, the currents, every ship, every signal. By the time the war broke out, there was hardly anyone, free or enslaved, who knew Charleston Harbor better than he did. And this was a lesson his mother, Lydia, had burned into him. It was his whole philosophy. Smalls was a master observer. He listened to the whispers, to the careless boasts of officers, to the timing of the guard changes. He was soaking up all the information he could, the very secrets that would become the keys to his own freedom. But here's where the story gets a little weird. As Smalls was listening, he started to notice something strange, a pattern of behavior from one of the white officers, a Lieutenant Abernathy. It was this whole series of little mistakes and coincidences that just seemed way too convenient to be accidents. A real pattern started to form. Abernathy would ask Smalls these oddball questions about the harbor's defenses. He'd forget and leave sensitive maps out on his desk. One day, a notebook with all the secret signal codes just happens to be left where Smalls can see it. And Abernathy's shore leave? It always seemed to happen at the perfect time, creating these windows of opportunity. This wasn't just sloppiness, it felt like someone was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. So you've got to ask yourself the question that must have been racing through Robert Small's mind. Is this officer just a complete fool making this impossible plan possible through sheer incompetence? Or was something else going on? Was Smalls being guided by a hand he couldn't see? Well, either way, on the night of May 13th, Smalls decided it was time to act. All the white officers were ashore for the night. Smalls quietly brought his own family and the families of his fellow enslaved crewmen aboard the Planter. And then, under the cloak of total darkness, he took the wheel and slipped the warship away from the dock. What followed was just a masterclass in pure nerve. Charleston Harbor was a fortress, lined with cannons. Smalls put on the captain's distinctive straw hat, hoping it would disguise him from a distance, and he began to bluff his way past five Confederate forts. At every single checkpoint, he flawlessly blew the secret whistle signals he'd memorized. The final test was Fort Sumter itself, the heart of the harbor's defense. One wrong move, 1 second of hesitation, and they would have been blown out of the water. But he held his nerve, gave the correct signal, and sailed right on by. As the sun finally started to peek over the horizon, Smalls steamed out into the open ocean. He ordered the Confederate flag to be lowered, and in its place, his wife Hannah hoisted a white bedsheet. It was a flag of surrender, sure, but it was also a flag of hope. He sailed directly for the Union blockade, delivering the ship, its cannons,
and a treasure trove of intelligence right into their hands.
Smalls was immediately hailed as a hero, and rightfully so. The information he provided on Charleston's defenses was priceless. But during his debriefing with the Union officers, he happened to mention the very strange, very careless behavior of Lieutenant Abernathy. And when he said that name, it caused quite a stir. And here's the twist. It turns out Lieutenant Abernathy wasn't a careless Confederate officer at all. He was a Union spy, a deep cover agent with the code name Sparrow. All those mistakes? They weren't mistakes. They were a deliberate, calculated, and unbelievably risky mission to get the Planter in its intelligence delivered to the Union. This just changes everything, doesn't it? Now, Small's courage, his genius, his meticulous planning, that was all him. No one can take that away. But he was also a piece, the most important piece, in a much larger chess game. The spy, Abernathy, had identified him as the perfect person, someone with the skill, the motive, and the guts to pull this off. And he subtly nudged him toward the finish line. But if you think Robert Smalls was going to let himself be defined as anyone's pawn, well, you don't know Robert Smalls. The first thing he did was offer his services to the Union Navy. He used his incredible knowledge of the southern coastline to become a pilot, guiding Union ships through the very same waters he had once navigated as a slave. And his story was just getting started. I mean, just look at this life arc. After the war, he goes back home, buys the very house his former master had owned, and then he gets into politics. The man who started life as property becomes a state legislator and then serves 5 terms in the US Congress, fighting for education and civil rights. It's just astounding. So this leads us with this really fascinating historical debate. How do we see this incredible event? Was it a pure act of individual heroism, a story about one man's genius and will to be free? Or was it a perfectly orchestrated spy mission, where Robert Smalls was the brilliant, absolutely essential, but ultimately unwitting star player? The truth is probably, as it often is, somewhere in the middle. And that's really the question that lingers. Look, it doesn't diminish Robert Smalls' breathtaking courage for a single second. He's the one who had to pilot that ship. He's the one who had to run that gauntlet of cannons. He risked everything. But it's a powerful reminder that history is often moved by these hidden currents, these unseen hands, creating heroes in ways that are far more complex than we could ever imagine.